guys, it is Kristen from Little Sparks Cosplay. I'm finally doing my explanation for my Centaur body, for my scenarios costume. I decided I'm not going to do a step-by-step tutorial because there are so many variables in building something like this that I can't just tell you measure this 4 feet long and cut here and screw here and glue here. It really depends on what you want out of the costume, what you want the Centaur body to do. Do you want it to walk? Do you want it to be rideable? Do you want it to be a deer or a horse? Or there's a lot of different things you need to take into consideration. So I'm just going to explain how the mechanics of mine work and why I made the choices that I did. So first off, I looked for some tutorials online. I did find some pictures, progress pictures from cosplayers that I love who have done similar things in the past. One being Liz Brickley. She did my Loon and a Daughter of Sarius for past BlizzCons, and she used the fishing line method where her back legs were hooked to fishing line, which would then hook to her feet, and when she walked, the fishing line pulled and moved back legs. Another one is Danielle Ballou. I'm sorry if that's not how you say your last name, Danielle. She did one with her fiance, I think it's a League of Legends character, that they actually wanted her to be able to ride it while he wore it. And so amazing props to them because they pulled it off and it's really cool. But obviously theirs had to be stationary and stable versus mobile and have movement to the back legs. Another one, of course, another name I'm going to butcher, Maja Felicitas did one, it's a horse centaur, and it has amazing leg motion. They got a gallop out of the legs that is uncanny. Like, it's so cool. But the fact that they did a horse is what allowed them to get such good movement, because they used the horse tail and brought it all the way to the ground and used that as a point of stability. So basically both legs could be completely lifted off the ground and they would always have that other point of contact with the ground. Because I did a deer and I didn't want any exposed cables or other holes or anything showing, I wanted it to look as natural and real as possible. I had to compensate for not having that other point of contact. So I did explain a little bit in my last video when I talked about like how I actually wore it, where the straps are and how it hooks to me. There were some choices I made, I'll show you, to prevent the back end from collapsing. So I wanted the legs to move. I wanted them to be able to do as natural of a step as possible. And so in order for that to happen, one leg comes up while the other one can support the weight of the back. But you risk breaking things when that happens, because the finished deer body weighs about 20 pounds. After the wood frame, the foam, the fur, like all the wire and pulleys and all that stuff, it ended up being about 20 pounds, which isn't terrible if you distribute the weight well, which is why I made a lot of the choices I did. In the last video, I do explain a little bit about how I made this rectangle on the end that fit around my butt. In the final piece, it has a piece of foam to make it a little bit more comfortable. But this prevented the back end, the tail end, from falling and collapsing to the ground or pulling me backwards if the legs didn't reset and to be able to stabilize it, or if I had to walk backwards. I made it so that if I leaned forward a little bit, the legs completely lifted off the ground and I could freely move backwards without worrying about the legs buckling under me and then the back end falling. So to give you an example, of course this is all broken because I kind of threw it around while I was getting Christmas decorations out. I'm going to hold this a little bit closer. Okay, we're going to pretend that this is my butt. So what this bar prevented was if these, we'll say that these didn't reset at all, and they're like way up here. If there was only this bar connecting the frame to me, the whole thing would tip down. And then I'd have a lot of problems getting the back end back up and the legs reset. Because I had this bar to go under my butt, if the legs didn't reset, it didn't matter. That bar stopped the back end from falling down. So that's what this bar is for. It also, I used it a lot. Maybe I can show here. I'm using my phone to record this, so it's like way on the other side of the room. I'm hoping that everything is being shown. So this is how it fit on me. If I needed to walk backwards and get those back legs off the ground, all I had to do was lean forward and the legs completely picked up off the floor. So that bar came in handy so much. So I highly recommend you take that into consideration when you're building your frame. Okay, now for the legs. These legs were my original legs, so they're just straight pieces of wood. There's nothing fancy about them. The final legs actually have a joint at the knee. They're like about here. It's cut and there's another hinge here. And the bottom half of the leg has more of a bent shape for a more natural looking leg. So what I did was there's a eye hook and then the hinge, and then there is a eye hook and then I think a pulley or something. I'm not entirely sorry that I'm like kind of flaking here, but it's all covered in fur and I can't take it apart now, so I can't 100%. I will post a link to a diagram that I drew that explains a little better. But there are two pulleys here, and then pulleys, I believe they're here on the final one. And then there's hinges and eye hooks that run along that these cables feed through. And so when I pull this cable, it makes the leg move. Now in the final one, because there's a hinge further down the leg, I actually had to put a small block of wood here on the frame, which made it so that when I pulled this forward, it only did this swing motion until it hit that piece of wood. Then this part couldn't move any further, and it forced this bottom half of the leg to then move at the hinge that was there. So if I can swing this guy around a bit, I might be able to show you. Yeah, I'm totally messing up my carpet here. There we go. So, find my pulley here. That should be this one. When I pull it, of course that's stopping it. entirely see it because I can't pull as strong with my arms as with my legs. But there is a point where this top part swings forward, can only swing that far, and then this part moves. So it takes kind of a more realistic step because it moves in two spots. I'm going to post a bunch of links in the comments to some test videos and things that I did, and I think I have a short video of me walking at BlizzCon, and hopefully that will help. There are wheels inside the hooves that stick out a tiny bit. Even though it walked, I did need to have wheels because if for some reason the legs stopped working, if it stopped working, I needed to be able to still wear the costume. I didn't know how well I built it because I'm not a mechanic, I'm not a construction worker, I'm not an engineer. So I had no idea how long this thing would last. It actually broke. I think it was about half hour before my judge time, so around noon. So I'd been wearing it from 7:30 that morning, maybe? Yeah, like 7:30. I wore the thing for 14 hours. I did take it off several times, and my boyfriend carried it. But I did wear it for most of the day. But it did break. There are pulleys on the final one to make the motion here where the cable comes and hooks to my legs with, I just have Velcro straps that the cable hooks to. There are pulleys here to make that motion smooth. Well, when we first started doing tests and putting this together, where the cable hooked to my leg was high. It was up high on my leg. So we had run the cable under the pulley here and up so that it went on the outside. Well, what happened was there's a metal casing around the wheel part of the pulley, and because we had changed where the tension needed to be and where it needed to hook to my legs, which was much lower on my leg, the cable was actually being pulled down, and it was rubbing, instead of wheeling along the wheel going upwards, it was rubbing on that casing, and it completely wore through the metal casing of the pulley and stopped working. So we rushed it outside to the patio, flipped it over. Luckily it wasn't something back in this part because there's really, I intended for there to be a lot easier of a way for me to get to the mechanics and stuff that are on the sides of the back of the legs, but it didn't work out that way. It's pretty much, I can never get or see what's under here ever again. So we were able to get some pliers, unhooked it, rewired it so that it was rubbing on the wheel part and doing what it was supposed to do, and then ran me down to judging, and at that point the legs no longer reset perfectly, but it was still good enough that it looked like it was walking. There's something else I was going to say. Oh, a thing I left out about the construction. On the final one, there are springs in the back. There's springs that hook the back of the leg to this part of the frame, and also the side to the side of the frame. That helped reset the legs after each step. Those springs were tight, and then when I would step forward and then go to step with the next foot, those springs would help pull this leg back into its original position. I just used the springs you can get at Home Depot that are for, I think they're in like the section where like the screen door springs and stuff are. I think that's where I got them. But yeah, so there are springs on it to help reset it. Other than that, it's really up to you to like how you want to make it. If you're making a horse, maybe you want to use the tail as a stability point. Maybe you want an even more realistic step motion and want to put a third hinge not only at the hip and the knee, but at the ankle. Especially if you want like a trotting motion like a horse. It's really up to you. I'm sure there's a billion better ways to do it than the way I did it. I hope that people take what I can give them and run with it and make even more amazing things. I will never be the type of cosplayer who will keep secrets from you. I don't need to have secrets. I don't need to be the best at anything. I'm not trying to make a career out of any of this. I'm just doing it for fun. So if you have any questions, please just don't hesitate to ask. I will do my best to explain things. Obviously, I'm not the greatest at explaining things, but I will do my best. I hope that helped you and try to understand a little bit about how everything works. But I know I'm horrible at explaining things. But good luck. If you have any questions, send me a message on Facebook.